Hello and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who'd like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you.
Hi, I'm Helen Leathers, and with me today is my business partner and co-host Tom Dillon. Good morning, Tom. How are you today?
Today, I'm a bit bruised and battered today.
Are you?
I am. I'm feeling a bit achy.
Tell us why.
I have this week been ice skating with my grandson. So I've had 3 lessons, ice skating lessons, over 3 days.
And
so
did you fall over?
I fell over lots. I was commended on my falling over. The instructor said, "You fall well."
Okay, is that a compliment?
That was the only compliment I got all week. But yeah,
you got a certificate too.
I've been demonstrating my growth mindset this week, doing something new for the first, well, not for the first time, but I think I've always been able to get on a ice skating rink and get round. But we've been learning how to do it properly.
Excellent.
And we're much better.
Good. And you had lots of fun together.
But I ache. I have bruises. And yeah.
We don't bounce as we get older.
No. And you use muscles in different ways when you're ice skating to how you would normally. So
yeah.
So I'm a bit achy. But other than that, I'm very well and excited about recording another podcast.
Fabulous. Because there's something I wanted to ask you about.
Oh.
I know, and that's what I thought we'd focus on today. So lots of times online from coaches, business coaches, all sorts of different people, we see a model to help people find some meaning in their life, which is quite often a topic of coaching discussion when something we're going to come on to in a future episode. But they use the Ikigai model.
Ah, yes.
And we've had conversations about this before. So I thought it would be a really useful discussion to have and perhaps do a little bit of myth busting.
Yes. The myth of Ikigai. Well, Ikigai does exist as a concept in Japanese. So it is there. It's not a myth in that sense, but the use of that diagram has become Ikigai, and it's not.
Yeah. So let's chat about that. So
okay.
For any listeners who aren't familiar with the Ikigai Venn diagram, could you describe it for them?
It's going to be a challenge.
We'll put a visual in the show notes, but just for the sake of
But in
argument.
putting a visual in the show notes, we're perpetuating that myth that diagram is Ikigai.
Oh, dilemma. Maybe we should label it, this is not Ikigai.
Yeah, I think we'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. So it is a Venn diagram with 4 intersecting circles. So they all cross over in the middle. So there is an area right in the middle where they all overlap, and that's where Ikigai is supposed to exist. Okay.
And it's designed, is it not, to help people find a meaningful way to earn money, to earn a living?
Yeah, it's an occupational model. So the 4 circles that overlap are labelled as what you're good at, what you could get paid for, what the world needs, and what you love. So where the circle that's labelled what you're good at overlaps with what you could get paid for, that would be labelled as a profession, which makes sense.
Yeah. Good at that, can get paid for it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
The overlap of what you're good at and what you love is labelled as your passion, which again makes sense.
Yep.
What you love and what the world needs is labelled as your mission, because you're doing good in the world. The world needs it.
Yep.
And what the world needs and what you can get paid for is labelled as your vocation.
Okay, yes, that makes sense too. The world needs it, you can get paid for it, has good meaning.
Yes.
In the world. Fabulous.
So the sweet spot is that bit in the middle where you are, you're good at it, you love it, the world needs it, and you can get paid for it. So in terms of finding your perfect job, then that would sit there. Oddly, and this is perhaps a little bit of a problem with the model, it doesn't look at the intersection between 3 circles. It just looks at all 4, or looks at the circles separately. So there are some gaps. So if you're doing something that you love and the world needs and you get paid for, what's that bit?
Something you're not good at, by the sounds of it.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe that's why they've done it. Anyway, so they haven't labelled those points. Probably it's too small a space on the diagram to label it. But anyway, So that's a problem with the diagram. But so it's not perfect as a model of looking for the perfect occupation. The model isn't perfect, but as our friend George Box, the statistician, always says, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So I think it's quite a useful model if you were engaged in career coaching to talk through with people and to look at where they might find some meaningful purpose in their occupation.
Yeah.
And I tend to use it as a diagram of meaningful purpose.
You just take the Ikigai out.
I take the Ikigai out. Because, right, so the reason that I do that is that originally the model was created by a Spanish astrologer called Andre. How do you say it? How would you say it in Spanish? Anyway, Mr. Zuzanaga. I can say that bit.
He was an astrologer.
Astrologer, yeah.
Okay.
So he came up with that as a way of looking at. So he just called it the purpose diagram.
Right.
So slightly different, but so that existed, and then a business coach from Guernsey called Mark Wynne had seen this diagram and seen that it talked about purpose. He'd then been listening to a TED talk by Dan Buettner, who's a National Geographic researcher, and looks at longevity in different cultures around the world. So why
Those blue zones they're called?
Yes,
yes,
exactly. Yeah. So he'd found people in Okinawa. Is that how you say it? Okinawa.
I don't know.
Okinawa.
I'm not sure.
That place in Japan.
Yeah.
It's an archipelago in Japan. And found people lived long, happy lives there. And they were looking at some of the reasons why. So some of the reasons are that they eat a plant-based diet, lots of tofu. They also have very tight friendship groups, which we know from sort of positive psychology. Positive psychology research is a good indicator of living a long life. But they also have this thing called Ikigai, which is about the reason you get up in the morning, your reason for living, your raison d'etre. So yes, so that is Ikigai, but it's not necessarily about your occupation. So it doesn't have to fulfill those 4 factors to be Ikigai.
So I saw it described in a way that the older you get, the more you understand your Ikigai.
Yes.
And that it's about the small things in life and what makes it joyful and what makes you content, which is lovely and completely different to the westernised Ikigai Venn diagram that we've just talked about.
And he obviously interviewed lots of people in Okinawa and interviewed a 102-year-old great-great-grandmother and said, what's it like holding your baby? And she said, it's like heaven. And that to her was Ikigai. That was her reason for getting up in the morning, was to hold her great-great-great-granddaughter, or one of those. It was 101 years between them.
Wow, amazing.
So it doesn't have to be that big, overarching, fulfilling all of those 4 things. So some of the factors that actually underpin Ikigai in that Japanese concept are starting small. So, you might have an overall vision for your life, but even if there is some mission, some vocation, you've got to take small steps towards it. It's a bit like a solution-focused approach, taking small steps.
Yeah.
You have to release yourself, so not being too preoccupied with getting somewhere, that you want to be something more than you are at the moment. So being happy with how you are at the moment, so releasing yourself from that pressure. So then you can engage with each day in a full way and experience life in its fullest. So harmony and sustainability. So some of that is about the environment, caring for the world around us, but also maybe helping to empower others to live their best lives. So it's selfless in that sense. It could be. It could be very much about, well, I'm going to have a morning cup of coffee every day and building that into your life. That's the 4th bit, is the joy of little things. So maybe taking pleasure in a cup of coffee in the morning, watching the sunset. I had that a few weeks ago. I was on the phone to you.
Yes. Going
round and roundabout. I was hands-free.
On hands-free,
yes. But I was going round and roundabout, missed my turn because I was preoccupied with what you were talking about. See, I was listening.
And we can't do two things at once.
No, I can't do two things. I totally missed my turning. So I had to go around the roundabout again. So I was cursing the fact I had to go around the roundabout again. But then as I came down the main road, dual carriageway, up ahead of me was a murmuration of starlings, which was gorgeous. No, okay, I was slightly distracted from the road by the murmuration of starlings. But
There's a theme here.
I was safe. So that, I recognised, only happened as a result of me missing my turn. Had I not missed my turn, I wouldn't have seen it. And it was joyous. I love seeing a murmuration of starlings.
Yes.
So that's taking pleasure in the small things. And I think the following morning, I was driving in to visit a client, and it's fairly early in the morning, and just the sunrise and that you could see the moon, and again, just a joyous moment of looking at the world around me. So taking pleasure in the joyful, that's the fourth element of Ikigai, and just being in the here and now. So a bit of mindfulness, just being present.
Being present in the day that you are in.
So that's really Ikigai. It's not necessarily about those four intersecting circles.
So would we like to see people not calling it Ikigai?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great model. If you're into career coaching, thinking about your occupation, where you want to go in life, then I think it's a great model to start thinking about, well, what can I make some money at that I actually enjoy doing and I'm actually good at and would serve the world?
Yeah, I know that a previous coach of mine has used it in a session with me, and we found it really, really useful to work through together and kind of delve deeper into my thinking around the work that I was doing at the time. Yeah,
so I think we just need to stop calling it Ikigai. Yeah. And actually, I've used it with people and said, this isn't Ikigai. It gets used as Ikigai. And then they come back to me and go, oh, that Ikigai diagram.
I know.
Stop it.
Yes, people still refer to it. Are we being pedants about this?
No, because I think in terms of credibility as a coach, you want to get it right, don't you?
Yeah.
So actually to talk about a diagram, if we go back to the origins of it, the Spanish designer of it called it purpose.
Yeah.
So that is it. It is a model of meaningful purpose.
And it's one way that that can help you to find meaningful purpose in the work that you do, particularly.
Yes.
So I think in that way, yes, it's useful.
So as I say, as coaches, if we're going to have some credibility, we need to get these things right. Now, person we're talking to might have no idea what we're talking about and just accept that it's Ikigai. But then if they find out later it's not Ikigai at all, then, wow, they told me it was.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because then that reflects back on you and they then might lose some rapport or trust with you,
Maybe.
perhaps.
Yeah. Well, we just want to get it right, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have other models that we explore and take apart. I've got one. The Kubler-Ross change curve is one.
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about on another episode, another myth-busting episode. So hopefully that satisfied your annoyance with the Ikigai model being used in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's always interesting, isn't it, when you see a post on social media, for example, because there's part of you that wants to go, stop using it. But if you enter into that debate and that challenge, then you don't know what's going to happen on social media because it can become a bit of a scary place sometimes. So.
Yeah, and you can be seen as negative in challenging things.
Yes.
Which, from a coaching perspective, people don't like negative coaches.
No.
But it's useful to challenge.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't challenge it, then obviously if people just accept that as being Ikigai, they ignore the richness of Ikigai as the concept that exists in Japan, because it is all about those different things and making the most of your day, taking joy from each day, starting small. All of those things, all of that richness that comes with the Japanese concept gets lost if it's just one diagram.
Yeah, and part of it is that lost in translation, and much of the work that's sort of espoused online about the Ikigai model, in inverted commas, comes from non-Japanese people.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's important to go back to the origins of
and
this.
Mark Wynne, who merged the two ideas together, openly admits he kind of thought, oh, well, that's interesting. I'll create a diagram. Wasn't expecting it to go viral. And it's obviously taken on a life of its own. But holds his hands up and goes, yeah, I didn't mean anything by it. I was just playing with ideas.
Fabulous. So thank you for clearing up some of the confusion around that model. And we are going to come back to it perhaps in terms of meaningful purpose in a future episode. Because like you say, it is useful as a meaningful purpose Venn diagram.
Good. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Tom. And next time on our podcast, we are going to be talking about something that's fairly new, something that's very exciting, and something that we do already.
Transformational coaching.
Yes, transformational coaching. So do tune in for that next episode. And if you don't want to miss it, make sure you subscribe so then you'll hear all about all our future podcasts. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.